All right, hello and welcome everyone to a special episode of DigiTales. This is our New Year's episode. And for the new year, like everyone, like many people around us, a lot of us have new plans, new ambitions, new hopes. And to achieve those hopes and ambitions and plans, a lot of us make New Year's resolutions, thinking that a lot of what we're doing has changed and now we can start afresh. The only thing that has changed is the date and not habit. And here today to talk up to us about how to sustain this change and how to keep up with your New Year's resolutions and your plans is Tahir Khan, who is a self awareness and meditation expert. How are you, Tahir?
Good, Faizan. I wouldn't use the word expert, but I'm good with that.
Well, lots of years of experience, more than 10 years of experience makes you an expert, according to Malcolm Gladwell, I guess. What's interesting is that you focused on the area of self-awareness. And I think, right off the bat, for a New Year's resolution to be successful, the first thing that you need is self-awareness. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So define self-awareness to you. What is self-awareness?
Seeing exactly myself separate and distinct from the patterns that take me where I don't want to go. Understanding the patterns and understanding that I am not those patterns. That for me is self-awareness.
And by patterns, you mean a certain type of behavior or a certain type of thought process that has been built over the years?
Yeah. If I can give an analogy for this, we are all born as a sky. A sky is what? A sky is unlimited. It's endless, boundless, unconditioned, unprogrammed, no rights, no wrongs, no goods, no bads. We're all born as a sky. And you notice that within children, they all have this trait of creativity and joy and energy and love and all these wonderful things that we will aspire for. Now, something happens along the way where the child is exposed to its environment and it begins to observe and absorb and observe and absorb, and certain things happen to the child also. And in that process, a child begins to develop some thought processes. And thought works with the body through what we call emotion. And a thought emotion that is sustained over a period of time becomes a pattern, or what we call a belief. A case in point, we go, for example, to our school's national anthem every morning. Look at the year 9 and year 10s. Serious business. Look at kindergarten, year 1 and year 2. And they're like this, and they're kind of looking away. But 10 years of this pattern being practiced over and over again means now I've become a Pakistani, meaning that I have been now defined by that pattern. Now, Faizan, think about this. Think about all the patterns that we have unconsciously created. And now some of that wholeness, that groundedness that we were born with, that's become veiled from us, and we've become defined by the smallness of the patterns. So for me, self-awareness is knowing my original self, but also knowing the patterns that create resistance in my life. Because some patterns are good, some patterns help me, and some patterns create heaviness within me.
And so the patterns that create heaviness, and when we have those patterns, most of us aren't aware that those patterns exist. So for, let's say, a New Year's resolution to be effective and for us to try to change the pattern, how do we first identify what those patterns are that might prevent us from achieving our year's goals, be it start a new business, be it lose weight, be it, fix relationships, whatever it is? How do we identify what our restricting pattern is?
Okay, so you brought two things into play here. You brought patterns and you brought some kind of commitment to change, which is what we call a new resolution. Okay, it's a commitment to change. And I'm assuming when I'm talking about a commitment to change, I'm not necessarily speaking about I should do something or I need to do something, rather than I want to do something. And that's the first thing I ask anyone who's committed to change. What's the underlying motive? Now, that question is going to lead us actually to what we're exploring with patterns. We're talking about a shift in your personal reality. You're trying to bring a shift to your reality by bringing some change to your life. Are you with me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm going to bring a shift to my reality and how I perceive life, if I'm going to bring change to my life, let's understand that my personality defines my personal reality. My personality defines, it influences the choices that I make that begin to condition how I respond to the world.
And that personality you're saying has been influenced by these, these habits or the
Now,
narrative.
absolutely. So now we're talking about what is my personal reality? Sorry, what is my personality? Well, my personality is being created by all those clouds. We gave the analogy of the sky and the clouds earlier on. All those clouds, all those patterns, they actually define my personality. That's who I am. I'm defined by all my patterns. And some of these patterns make me feel good, and some don't make me feel good. Now, how does that tie into my resolution? Say, for example, I want to lose weight.
Mhm. Most
Uh,
common resolution, huh?
I want to lose weight. Um, and I realize that if you actually explore behind that, if I lose weight, what will happen? I'll feel better. I'll feel more worthy. Um, I will feel more enough.
Mm-hmm.
So there I am, unknowingly going to the gym, doing all of these things, yet still not aware that I am feeding these patterns in my daily life. So can you see there's a resistance, there's not a freedom in the movement. The underlying reason why I really want to lose weight, on the surface, it may well be that I want to
Fit in
feel
better
better.
clothes.
But underlying, can you see what it really is? Another one, for example, food. I eat all this wonderful, great food, this new food, make lifestyle changes. And as I begin to, and instead of this food being absorbed and filtering into my body, there I am digesting the food. But my thought processes are going towards some anxiety or some stress. So can you see there's no freedom in that movement of absorption and digestion? So I think very often what we're doing is we have a direction, but we don't realize there's a resistance that's working the other way. So again, we come back to what you said is self-awareness. I would ask everyone to really, if they want a commitment to change, this has to be contemplated. This has to be contemplated in this commitment to change. And I ask everyone this one question. Can you, in your stillness, can you see your underlying motive? Can you identify the underlying motive? We've given some examples. I'm maybe not enough, or I'm unworthy. Can you identify these underlying motives? That's the first thing.
How do you do that? I mean, if someone was to engage in a self-exercise, right? Say that making plans for the New Year's, losing weight is a common one. How do you identify that it is not the eating in itself or the working out in itself, but a narrative behind it that might be what requires the change. Is there an exercise that a person can do before they make the resolution?
Do you know, it's interesting when people want to come and um, give up, for example, smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you ask them, okay, what's your judgment about smoking? And a lot of people carry a judgment. Oh, it's bad, or it's not right, it's not good. But here's the thing: what if you would have no judgment about the smoking itself? Is it the smoking that's bad, or is it the judgment about the smoking that's creating resistance within you? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I often say to people, okay, if you had no judgment, how would you feel?
That
I'd
means
feel
if you
good.
didn't think smoking was bad.
If you had no judgment about it, if you had no judgment while smoking, how would you feel?
And what do most people say?
And people said, if I had no judgment, I'd feel light, I'd feel good. And if you're feeling light, if you feel good, why would you need to smoke?
Valid point.
So can you see it's often not so much the habit that we do that creates some of the resistance within us. There's often the judgment that we do. So the first thing I would say to someone, can you observe some of your self-judgments?
Right.
Can you begin to observe some of your self-judgments? And Faizan, for a lot of us, do you know what we find is difficult is because we don't actually give ourselves any quiet time or any contemplation time. You and I have had this conversation before, that when things are getting overwhelming, you shared once that you just went away to the beach, some quiet time, and just when the machinery calms down, you can begin to just kind of ask yourself some real honest questions. You begin to see really what is going on there for me. Unless the machinery calms down, it's going to be very difficult for you to really contemplate and really see what's going on within you. What's really the underlying motive over here? What really needs my attention?
Doesn't that quiet time come 5 times a day through prayer for most people?
Um, if it's done in the right way. But then if it's prayer and then you get back to the fast track thinking, I don't think it's enough. I think you need some incubated time. People go for itikaf. I often find that when people come out of that period, because of that incubation, there's more of an introspection, there's more of an inner seeing. And so I don't think to do this work, personally, I don't think just 5 times a day is enough to do this work. I think there has to be some deeper contemplation, deeper quiet time. I say to people, get away for a day, 2 days if you can. Allow the machinery to calm down. I think that kind of solitude is really important because, Faizan, what I'm seeing at the moment is one of the biggest addictions we have is doing. We think that the more we do, the more we'll get ourselves out of some kind of situation without actually that quiet time to see, actually, hold on, what's really going on underneath?
So you're saying that doing in itself can be an addiction, just the constant need to be doing something.
For sure. Faizan, if you think about this, again, this ties back to the pattern. When we are really young and we experience some kind of suffering, what do? We distract away from that. We distract away from that. We distract in terms of toys, make-believe, friends, food, technology as young children. And this grows into friends, eating, relationship, drugs, working hard, putting in long hours. So we've actually spent all our life actually doing and distracting away really from what's going on within us. So you're absolutely right. If after all these years, I'm going to need to look at what's going on underneath, but my doing is actually my addiction. And
So that's
start
an
finding,
interesting New Year's resolution for someone to actually say that this year there'll be less doing and more thinking, more introspection.
more solitude, more solitude. A simple tool I give to everyone who's starting our meditation class, very simple tool that I find can bring phenomenal change. A number of times a day, 20, 30 times a day, say 15, 20 seconds. Let's try that right now. Try it with you. Ask yourself, am I aware? Just that one question, am I aware? And you realize, well, hold on, I'm aware of my body. Are you aware of your body right now, Faizan?
I think so. I mean, it's right here.
You're aware of your body. You wouldn't say your body is aware of you, right? You'd say, I'm aware of my body.
Right.
Yeah. You'd also say, okay, I'm aware of my thoughts. You wouldn't say my thoughts are aware of me. I'm aware of my thoughts. So can you see this object and subject relationship developing over here, where the objects, be it the body, being my thoughts, consistently change throughout the day. But that which is aware, there's a constancy about that. That awareness, that part of you that was aware 2 minutes ago is the same that was aware 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago. So every time I pause and just very simply ask myself, am I aware? And just become aware of body, thoughts. I'm creating a separation between my story, the objects of experience, and the self, the unconditioned self.
See, so if I understand this correctly, what you're saying is then there would actually be three distinct things to keep in mind. One is the self or the awareness, as you refer to it. Then there is the set of experiences or narratives or beliefs that have sort of been built over the years that affect this self or this awareness. And the third is the body in which this self resides, that the self operates. And so now there are three things to keep in mind. Is that a fair assessment?
Not quite. You see, it's a basic assumption, and probably a wrong way of looking at it when we say, you said the body, the self resides in the body, so that means the body should be aware of the self. But you are aware of the body. It's not that the body is aware of you. You are aware of the body. It's a very subtle thing that we say that awareness resides within the body. But then think about it. You are aware of the body. The body is not aware of you. You are aware of the body. You are having an experience. You are having an experience of your thoughts. When I say you, I speak about you, consciousness, awareness. You are having an experience of all of these things. So just by that simple exercise, am I aware? Done many times a day. Just a simple exercise. And holding that experience for 15, 20 seconds, you realize that all the objects of experience, they may change, but there's a constancy about the eye, that which observes. It's like a television screen. Everything on the television screen will change, but there's a constancy about the television screen. The sky, there's a constancy about the sky. The clouds will change, they will form, they will unform. And this is actually where meditation comes in. And this beautiful little exercise does exactly that. It just grounds you into a more stable awareness. Because you can see, actually, hold on, I'm aware of my body. I'm aware of my thoughts. And so often we lose that awareness and get lost into our thoughts, get drawn into our thoughts. But just a little exercise done many times a day, just the question, am I aware? Am I aware? It will just slow the machinery down. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And so when you're aware and when you're slowing the machinery down, coming back to your earlier point, only when you slow down can you then start to see habits and patterns that you might have, let's say, been engaged in. And you start observing those, right?
Otherwise, when it's like, for example, being on a treadmill and running on a treadmill and explaining to someone what stillness is all about. It's just not going to happen. You are going to have to get on the treadmill just to slow right down. I often tend to find is that once you think about this, you've had this experience, I'm sure, before, that you're really overwhelmed by a certain situation. It seems overwhelming, and maybe you get fed up, maybe you take some time out, you get away for a little. And as the machinery kind of calms down, you realize, actually, hold on, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Once we're in the story, you can't see any clarity.
Why does that happen? Is it emotion that we lose control of? And how do you control? Because that's another thing that people seem to struggle with, is when you're in a situation, you get worked up and then it overwhelms people. And that's partly, one of the reasons maybe people fall off the bandwagon, whether they're trying to lose weight or whether they're trying to start a new business, for budding entrepreneurs out there, and they've encountered that first roadblock. And I can't do this. This is too tough. Yeah, nahi ho raha mujhse. How do you kind of slow it down and say, wait, hold on a second. This is what it is. Here's how I break it out. Here's how I think about it. And guess what? You know what? I might actually be able to get through this.
I don't think, Faizan, this can be done on the moment unless actually you've trained yourself to pause, step back.
From the situation itself, while it's live, you actually step back.
No, what I mean by stepping back, think about this. If you've developed a practice throughout the day of just, am I aware? And pausing and holding that pause. Here's what will happen. Every time you step into that space, you carry the residue of that stillness with you. You carry the residue of that stillness with you. And what you'll tend to find is that when things get triggered, normally you become so pulled into the emotion of the situation. But the more I'm actually practicing just this one simple thing, am I aware? Am I aware? You're holding that groundedness, that stillness, and it's deepening with you throughout the day, so that when something gets triggered, you're not pulled into the emotion of the moment. There's a bit of a difference.
Okay, got it. So you're not actually getting pulled in. Versus pulling yourself out. You're actually not even going into it.
You're not going in. It feels uncomfortable. It feels overwhelming, or it feels anxious. But I think you're able to observe those states rather than being pulled into them. And that's really important. So it's not only the 30, 40 times a day. It's the quiet time, the solitude time that I bring into my life that is every bit as important as my working business day. The people that come to us for meditation, it's not about your awareness exercise, your awareness practice being separate from your life. It has to very much be integrated into your life.
And how is this exercise? A lot of people compare, let's say, when they think of meditation, they immediately go into yoga. Some people talk about therapy. How are these different? How are they different from each other? I mean, yoga is also about stillness in a sense, right?
It's interesting. The meaning of yoga actually means union, a connection. And so certainly there's a connection with your body that's going on. There's a connection with your body. What I do tend to find is that whilst you are connecting with your body and whilst you're in the yoga studio, the ashram, or wherever you're practicing what you're doing, the mind is generally still. But as you come out of that place, you've not really known your patterns, you've not seen your patterns are still going to be triggered. And so I think it provides a quiet time and incubation time that's important, Faizan. But I think the capacity to see yourself, to pause throughout the day, to see to see your thoughts, to see the body, to see your patterns, that is unique unto itself. You mentioned therapy, and again, I think therapy is the practice of actually seeing some of the patterns that are not serving you. What I tend to find when meditation comes in, and it's really useful, is that it allows you to, and that's actually the analogy I gave of the sky and the clouds. What meditation is, it's a journey into knowing yourself as a sky, that unconditioned part of you. And the more I know that unconditioned part of me, the more I'm able to observe and see my patterns and not be consumed by them. And that's actually, for me, what meditation is. It's knowing that original face.
Interesting. So if I tie it back, right? I mean, so from what I take away from this is that small moments during the day, 20, 30 times a day, or maybe let's say 20, 30 seconds each, even shorter. You sit back and you just pause and you ask yourself if you're aware and you become still. That's step one.
And just one more thing I want to add to that. The reason that is so important is that, for example, if you give someone be quiet with yourself for 15, 20 minutes, people will get edgy with that. They've got to have these smaller experiences throughout the day. So throughout the day, as you said, if I pause, I become aware, and I do that many times a day, what I'm doing, I'm beginning to hardwire to create a neural program of stillness, so that once I start enjoying that space and realizing that space, then I can do it then I want to do it for longer periods of time because it feels good. It feels good to me.
Got it. So then you're doing it to set up the experience, build it into a longer space of time. As it gets longer and you slow down, you think about what it is that's driving you, the narrative that's driving you.
You have the space.
You have the space and the capacity to do that. And then once you're in that space, do you really think about where you want to instill change? You know, whether that want is a cigarette or a smoking habit, or whether it's weight loss, or whether it's a desire to build your own enterprise or do something different in your life. You approach it from that space, correct?
It goes back to what we were saying before. There's a commitment to change. I see that I want to change. You see more clearly, but you will also be able to see the underlying patterns that are influencing that change. Maybe that unworthiness, the narrative that's feeding the unworthiness, or not feeling enough, and your habit and your narrative of not feeling enough. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to someone today. I received a text message by someone, and they said, "Tahir, you know what? I just had a great realization that not only am I observing my thoughts, but I'm also choosing. I have the authority to create the thoughts that I want." And then this individual turned around and said, "But you know what? I just realized I have a long way to go." And this individual has a habit of self-sabotage.
And why does that kick in? A lot of people seem to have that, where they'll be doing okay, and then suddenly they'll stop. The pattern will break. If it's someone with a smoking habit, they'll smoke one weekend and say, "You know what? Oh, I can't do this." Or with an eating habit, they'll go into a weekend and binge eat. and say, oh, I can't do this. And then they'll fall off that, like, let's say that New Year's resolution that they had planned. Self-sabotage, how do you get over that?
Awareness is king.
So again,
Meaning,
awareness tied back to awareness. Interesting.
Faizan, why if you see, I don't think it's just awareness will never create change. Remember that awareness will never, it's that realization, awareness with realization when you can see, so for this individual this morning I was speaking to you about, when they realize, Tahir, you're right. I keep on self-sabotaging myself. And in that realization, there's going to be a deeper commitment. You know what? I'm going to be aware that I don't do this. I'm going to be aware that I don't feed that pattern. And when you become aware of not feeding it, any pattern will die down. Remember, we have created unconsciously these patterns. We have got to become consciously aware of how we are now feeding them. And as we do so, the patterns begin to die down.
Interesting.
And we start feeling more alive because the energy that we've invested into these patterns starts freeing up. And so my awareness throughout the day, exercises, it just gives me that space to be able to see how I'm feeding things that don't feel good to me. And another question I often like to ask people when it comes to the patterns. In order to deepen that realization, who would you be? Who would you be? And what would be available to you in the absence of this concern?
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about this. The pattern that you have, in the absence of this pattern could be unworthiness, could be I'm not enough, could be I can't do this.
Got it. So, okay, so that pattern being missing, when it's missing, who is the person you become?
Yes. Who would you be? Who would you be? And just what becomes available to you in your life in the absence of that. Now, something, Faizan, really interesting happens over here. So often when people start contemplating that, they realize that actually, hold on, there would be ease, there would be freedom.
Liberating feeling.
But then think about this. Can you see how this one little exercise is just a function of memory? It's just, now in the same token, all the biggest addiction has been our memory. And so you realize that it's my memory again that has created this pattern. That pattern is not your truth. So in both cases, can you see how memory has given you that experience of freedom? In the other case, memory gives you that feeling of being trapped or at the mercy of that pattern. And you realize, actually, hold on. Just like in this moment, I created the experience of freedom. In the same way, as I become aware of the pattern and I stop feeding it because I have created it. The pattern does not own me. I am the creator of that pattern.
So it's almost like saying, when they say, when that statement comes, go to your happy place, right?
Yeah.
Whatever your happy place is for different, some people it's like, I'm on the beach. Some people want to go skiing. I mean, as the pictures you can tell from the back, I'm a big car guy. My happy place is driving, and the joy that I get from that, reminds me that that's a great space to be all the time.
Faizan, think about this. When we create some experiences in your mind, our body starts being fed a different emotional soup. Now, imagine for a long time living unconsciously, creating patterns that create fight and flight within the body, creating emotions that don't feel good within the body. And so you realize it doesn't take long before that dis-ease creates disease. Absolutely, when we begin to learn to create emotions that feel good to us, that's a phenomenal tonic. That's a phenomenal tonic.
And that's what you
And
need to sustain. I think, as you're saying this, it sounds like from a New Year's resolution, tying it back to that topic, the resolution should then not just be the desire to create change in a specific habit, but it is the desire to be aware of the self, to take stock periodically over the course of the day, and to find your happy place and be able to retire to it. And remember that as you retire to a happy place, the sad place that we're creating is also created by the mind.
Faizan, let's marry the two together.
Right.
I lose weight. I want to lose weight. Okay. Now, if I can contemplate on how that will feel, how that will impact my life, that's a happy place. That's a happy place. But I'm now training the body to feel that emotion. I'm training the body to feel that emotion of how it would be. So it's not just now you're emotionally invested in that experience.
Right, of course.
Time, you're pausing throughout the day makes you aware of how you can so easily sabotage that experience through your patterns that create resistance within you. Are you with me?
Got it. Yes, makes complete sense.
Yeah. Marry the two together, that answers your question on how we can sustain a New Year resolution.
Very interesting. That's a nice way to bring it together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's come together very nicely there.
Any other last tips before we sign off? Because it's difficult holding on to a New Year's. It's very easy in the first month because it's only been 30 days. But come November, October, December, how do you keep that momentum sustained? Is it just a reminder of that feeling good? Is that enough to sustain it till the end of the year?
Do you know, again, working with the people that we coach in meditation, I ask people a simple question. Do you want to live consciously or do you want to live unconsciously? And for most of us, we are living unconsciously. Unconsciously meaning we're living at the mercy of our patterns. Think about this, Faizan. We wake up roughly the same time, in the same way, same morning routine. We have the same bathroom routine. We get changed roughly the same time. We have roughly the same breakfast. We turn our phone off roughly the same time. We kind of respond in the same way. We'll watch the same programs, go to the same restaurants, and so forth. So you're talking about a lot of us are living life through memory recall.
Very mechanical.
We're living a patterned existence. It's actually become our comfort zone. And so there can never be growth and newness within a comfort zone. And I want people to realize that, is that there can never be growth and newness from a comfort zone.
No pain, no gain. So that means that's a true statement.
Well, you're right in the sense that the pain actually, when you actually start getting out of your comfort zone, Faizan, that starts feeling unfamiliar. When you start feeling the old patterns, that feels unfamiliar. You can call that the pain.
Right.
And certain gain will come from that unfamiliar experience of seeing your pattern. Think about it. We've distracted all our lives away from our suffering. Now, all of a sudden, when you're saying, can you see it? Can you see it and not feed it? Now, it's going to feel, as you say, pain. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. And that's what I'm going to say to people. Going into the new year, the unfamiliar is not necessarily your enemy. Think about this, Faizan. We are now going into times where it is unfamiliar. We don't know what's going to happen. And a mantra that I often use that works really well for me is I don't know. I cannot control the future. I don't know. And so I don't know, that one statement gives me tremendous freedom to not try and control the unseen. And so the more I'm aware that I don't know, the more I'm aware that I'm not going to feed the patterns that don't feel good to me, the more I'm aware that I want to contemplate on the very thing that I want to create in my life. They say the first manifestation is the thought and the feeling that you have, that you create about what it is you want to achieve. So when I begin to do these things, and know that unfamiliar is where movement comes from, I'm going to be okay with the statement that I don't know. I'm going to be okay with the unfamiliar instead of wanting to stick with the same old patterns. Because Faizan, quite frankly, some of these patterns, feeling crap, has become very normal for many of us.
So breaking free of that is where the challenge lies, and that's where the reward comes from.
And what you call the pain. Absolutely.
And that's the pain, right?
Yeah.
Excellent, Tahir. This is great advice. Hopefully, this gives some pointers to those who checked out the video on how to pursue New Year's resolutions, stick to them. It's the little things we can do, just being self-aware during the course of the day, and then reminding ourselves what the objectives are, how we will feel when we achieve them. And then when we are about to sabotage, breaking away from that and reminding ourselves back again of how great it'll feel if we were to achieve, and keeping ourselves on track for the remainder of the 12 months during which we have to get the resolution achieved, right?
Absolutely.
Lovely talking to you, Tahir. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And Happy New Year to every one of you. And we'll see you in the new year. Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.